Hello friends, today we are going to discuss Jyotiba Phule's views on education. As we all know, Jyotiba Phule was a great political philosopher of 19th century. He is also known as the Renaissance political thinker. He wrote so many books. He was both an activist and also a philosopher. On the one hand, he has started Satyasodak Samaj and fought against social evils and social inequalities prevalent in the contemporary society of 19th century. On the other hand, he was also a philosopher who wrote so many books and who enlightened millions of people with his works, academic works. This is how Jyotiba Phule is a Renaissance political thinker who strove to the occasion and gave a call for having the scientific inquiry and spirit of inquiry, scientific thought, scientific temper and spirit of inquiry in every educated person, so that those social evils and social inequalities will be wiped out. That's why he is very aptly called as a Renaissance political thinker. Jyotiba Phule belongs to 19th century. Now we'll discuss about his views on education. The history of education in India is incomplete without mentioning the contribution of Mahatma Jyotiba Phule. Mahatma Jyotiba Phule, who emphasized the need to have education to all the sections of society, irrespective of caste, creed, gender, region, religion, community, or color of the body. He has advocated a free and compulsory education, universalization of education to all the people. So, he made this demand before the British Commission, the William Hunter's Commission in 1881, and he demanded that British government should give more priority to the spread of education. And he also demanded more funds for educational institutions in India. So the history of education in India is incomplete without mentioning the contribution of Mahatma Jyotiba Phule. Jyotiba Phule is a champion of education in general and women's education in particular in India. He was living in a society where social evils, social inequalities, patriarchal dominance, male domination in the society was very rampant, and gender inequalities were there, gender insensitive society was there. In such a society, he has championed the cause of education, and he advocated that education is the only dynamic tool that can write off the evils of social society and social inequalities. He demanded education as a compulsory tool for establishing an egalitarian society based on liberty, equality, and justice. So, Jyotiba Phule is a champion of education in general and women education in particular in India. Jyotiba Phule considered education as a dynamic tool for social and economic emancipation. As we all know, the 19th century Indian society was filled with social inequalities due to the Varna system, caste system, and sub-caste system. There were cleavages in the society. There were social divisions among the society. And people were getting respect and dignity based on their ownership of land and other economic resources. So there was huge inequality in the society, and Jyotiba Phule wanted a reconstruction of society and transforming the society from a dominant upper caste society to an egalitarian society with equality and liberty. So for this, Jyotiba Phule considered education as a dynamic tool for social and economic emancipation. As a part of Satyasodak Samaj movement, Jyotiba Phule established schools from 1848 onwards. So he has started so many schools. He has started nearly 18 schools throughout Maharashtra, and he has also opened certain libraries for the people. And he also gave a report to the Hunter Commission established by Lord Ripon on the status of education in India. So he pleaded with William Hunter for establishing so many public institutions, education institutions, to spread mass education in India. That's why Jyotiba Phule, as a part of his Satyasodak Samaj movement, has established a social reform movement called Satyasodak Samaj. So during Satyasodak Samaj movement activities, Jyotiba Phule established schools from 1848 onwards. And Jyotiba Phule first educated his wife, Srimati Savitribai Phule, and along with spreading education in various sections of people, particularly backward classes, underprivileged sections, scheduled castes, scheduled tribes, and women. And Jyotiba Phule first chose his wife as a student, and he educated his wife first, Srimati Savitribai Phule, and he made her the first women teacher of modern India. So she also ultimately became the teacher and a warrior of spreading education in India, along with her husband. So Jyotiba Phule and Savitribai Phule are the wife and husband duo who spread the education in India, particularly in Maharashtra. Hence, Jyotiba Phule educated his wife, and Savitribai Phule was considered as the first women teacher of modern India. Jyotiba Phule stressed education, the need for mass education to challenge the social inequalities and social evils. So as we all know, the 19th century society is filled with the patterns of domination, patterns of dominance, and structures of dominance such as caste, economic wealth, social dignity. So under these patterns of dominance, Jyotiba Phule stressed the need for mass education to challenge the social inequalities and social evils. So 19th century is also a society where social evils are also very prevalent, widely prevalent. So to challenge the social inequalities and social evils, Jyotiba Phule wanted education, a mass education that is accessible and available to all the people. Now in today's lesson, that is Jyotiba Phule's plan of education and views on education, we have a lesson plan. According to this lesson plan, first of all, we must know Jyotiba Phule's views on importance of education. Secondly, Jyotiba Phule, Mahatma Jyotiba Phule, his life and works. He has written so many books. He was born in 1827 and he wrote so many books, Gulamgiri, Satyasodak Samaj Report, and various other books he has written. And along with these books, he has also conducted a newspaper called Dinabandhu. So we have to know about his life history and the works that the educational academic books that he has written. And after that, we must know his contemporary conditions. He lived in 19th century. So his contemporary conditions made him to demand for more education in the society. So unless we know the contemporary conditions prevailing in 19th century India, we cannot understand Phule's contribution to the society in general and to education in particular. So that's why we must know the contemporary conditions of Phule, particularly the 19th century conditions of Phule, to know more about his contribution to education. So after that, we'll be discussing about Phule's efforts on spread of education. He has by himself established so many schools, and he has also established various night schools, public libraries, and also he made a report to the Hunter Commission. So these are some of the efforts that he has made on the spread of education in India. So we must know what are the efforts that he has made. Besides expressing his own views on the utility of education to the civil society prevailing in India, he has also made certain serious efforts for the spread of education in India. So we must know Phule's efforts on spread of education. After that, he gave a plan, he will give an education plan. And what are the features of Phule's education? In all the views that he has expressed, we can draw some features. So what are the features of Phule's education? That we must know. After that, we must be knowing about the aims and objectives of Phule's education plan. So with what objective Phule has formulated and drafted his education plan, and what are the aims and objectives of Phule's education plan. So after that, we'll make a critical evaluation of Phule's contribution to Indian society in general, and particularly education sector in particular. So this is the lesson plan, which consists of Jyotirao Phule's views on importance of education. After that, Mahatma Jyotiba Phule life and works. After that, we'll be discussing about the contemporary conditions of Phule. After that, we'll be also discussing about Phule's efforts on spread of education. After that, we'll be discussing about the features of Phule's education. And later, we'll also be discussing about the aims and objectives of Phule's education plan before making the critical evaluation of the whole lesson. So this is all about the lesson plan. First, we'll go by his Jyotirao Phule on importance of education. So many philosophers have stressed the need to have education for attaining the civilizational values in any society. India is also not an exception. When in Indian society, many people like Raja Ram Mohan Rai, Dayananda Saraswati, Ishwar Chandra Vidyasagar, Keshav Chandra Sen, Aravind Ghosh, Madam Annie Besant. So these are various political thinkers who have stressed and emphasized the need to have education for claiming the rights of people, social rights, economic rights, and political rights. So among these philosophers, Phule's views on the need for education are very unique, and they are relevant to the contemporary society, and some of these views are relevant even to the present day society also. So that's why, first of all, we must know his views on education. Phule believed that education brings dignity and self-respect to any individual. Individual should live like a human being with dignity and self-respect. In fact, what separates human being and a beast? It's only the self-respect and dignity that separates human being and a beast. So without having a living like an animal existence or physical existence, without any dignity and self-respect, is as good as like living like a slave. That's why we must live like human beings. For that, we require dignity and self-respect. So any individual, modern period in general, Indian society in particular, need to have self-respect and dignity in his own respective life. That's why Phule believed that to attain your self-respect, the respect for your own being, for your own self, once you respect yourself, then only others respect you. That's called as self-respect. So you have to respect yourself. So the self-respect and dignity comes from education. Education facilitates all the people to have self-respect and dignity among themselves. That's why Phule believed that education is very essential to enhance dignity and self-respect to any individual in any civil society. This is first thing. A second thing is, Phule thought that education acts as a progressive instrument to inculcate human values in people. So, particularly 19th century society where Jyotiba Phule lived was ridden with social evils, social inequalities, and unjust social order, wherein social divisions were there. The caste system was very rampant. The Varna system and subcaste system were making people, it is preventing social intercourse and also common dining among the people, common intercourse, social friendship, and cooperation among the people. That's why when 19th century society has the structures of dominance and there are inhuman practices in the society, there was a need to have human values in the society. And education acts as a progressive instrument to inculcate human values among the people, according to Jyothi Phule. So Phule thought that education will act as a progressive instrument. It brings progress to the civilization. So the civilization values will be enhanced with the system of education in the respective society. That's why Phule thought that education acts as a progressive instrument to inculcate human values among the people. This is another important thing. And thirdly, according to Phule, education imparts scientific temper and spirit of inquiry among the people to oppose blind faiths and religious superstitions. So Phule believes that 19th century society is ridden with blind faiths, and there are so many social superstitions and religious superstitions. There is no exception to any religion. Hinduism, Islam, Christianity, Buddhism, Jainism, Sikhism, Zoroastrianism, Sufism, all the religions of the 19th century society are filled with religious superstitions and socially blind faiths. That's why to get the society out of these blind faiths and religious superstitions, you need to spread the education. Education will impart scientific temper and the spirit of inquiry and the spirit of questioning, the spirit of challenging the blind faiths and religious superstitions. So education imparts among the people two important qualities of Renaissance. They are the scientific temper and spirit of inquiry. In fact, modern societies are distinguished from the medieval societies and ancient societies with their nature of having the quality of scientific temper and spirit of inquiry. You see, the modern societies have so much of social, scientific development and scientific innovation. This is all because there are no superstitions and we have the scientific temper and spirit of inquiry. So that's why education imparts scientific temper among the people and spirit of inquiry among the people to oppose the blind faiths and religious institutions or superstitions in the society. So this is another important aspect of Jyothi Phule's views on education. And thirdly, Phule advocated that people should be educated to claim their social rights, economic rights, and political rights. So claiming rights is a modern idea. Rights are the means to achieve liberty. Without liberty, no human being can prosper. So the prosperity and progress of individual is inalienable with his condition of liberty. Without liberty, no person can be progressive. No person can advance himself to a higher position. That's why the advancement of human civilization, particularly respective individuals of any society, is possible only when the citizens are endowed with social rights, economic rights, political rights, cultural rights, and developmental rights. So these are the social conditions. Rights are the social conditions that facilitate human being to have thinking patterns, attitudinal patterns, and belief patterns. That's why Phule advocated that people should be educated to claim their social rights, economic rights, and political rights. Without education, people may be living in bondage and slavery, and that society is as equivalent as a medieval society, where superstitions were prevailing, blind faiths were prevailing. So what distinguished the modern society from the medieval society is the assertion of people of their rights, the social rights, economic rights, and political rights particularly. Of course, there are also other rights like cultural rights, educational rights, developmental rights. These rights are also there. But for a human being to live with self-respect and dignity, every human being needs to have social rights, economic rights, and political rights. So these rights are possible, according to Phule, only when people are educated. In fact, the education the system of education that facilitates human beings to claim their social rights, economic rights, and political rights. And after that, we'll be discussing Jyotiba Phule's life and works. Jyotiba Phule was born in Maharashtra on 11th April 1827 in a family of florists for the Peshwas, hence are called as Phule. Phule means flowers. So he lived in a family of Phules, of florists. They used to supply the flowers to Peshwa kings. Peshwa dynasty is a very strong dynasty in Maharashtra, which ruled the region for over so many centuries. So this family has provided Peshwas the flowers. That's why they're called as florists. So in local colloquial language, they are called as Phule. So Jyotiba Phule, born on 11th April 1827 in a family of florists for the Peshwas that are called as, that's why they are called as Phule. And he completed his education from a Scottish mission high school. So that was a Christian missionary high school where the Western education is available. In fact, the Britishers have introduced in 1813 through Charter Act the system of education, the Western education in India, preceded by the Wood's Dispatch. So this facilitated a good number of people to get educated in missionary schools. And they are come to close with the political ideas of the Western societies like liberty, equality, justice, fraternity, unity and integrity and so on. So whoever studied the Western political thought, Western political ideas and expertise in Western education, he is invariably believed to be an expert in Western political ideas also. So Phule has also completed his education from Scottish Mission High School in Maharashtra. And after that, there is an English-born American writer called Thomas Paine. Thomas Paine wrote a book, Rights of Man. So the book written by Thomas Paine, The Rights of Man of 19th century, that influenced Phule like anything. So Phule was influenced by Thomas Paine's book, The Rights of Man. And this book has influenced Phule to a large extent. That's why Phule always claimed himself as a fighter, as equivalent as a fighter of a fighter in America where the blacks' rights are protected. And here in India, the rights of underprivileged sections are protected. So the various who fought for the rights of black people in America and the various who fought for the rights of underprivileged sections in Indian society. So these are possible only with certain influences of great people like Thomas Paine. So Thomas Paine, in his book Rights of Man, he has given a philosophical background to the commencement of rights, evolution of rights, and need to have rights movements in various societies. So Thomas Paine's book, an English-born American political philosopher, Thomas Paine, who wrote a book, Rights of Man, and that book has influenced Mahatma Jyotirao Phule. So this is an important aspect of Phule's influence. And Phule is conferred with the title of Mahatma in Bombay in 1888. In fact, there are only two people who are conferred with the title of Mahatma. We see our father of nation Mahatma Gandhi in 20th century conferred with Mahatma, and in 19th century, that means a century ahead of Mahatma Gandhi, Jyotiba Phule was also conferred with the title of Mahatma in Bombay in 1888. So that's why we call him as Mahatma Jyotirao Phule. Mahatma Jyotirao Phule. So he is conferred with the title of Mahatma in Bombay in 1888. Phule died on 28th November 1890. So he has lived for the betterment of the lives of underprivileged sections, and he strived hard for the rights of the backward classes, scheduled castes, scheduled tribes, and women. So he died on 28th November 1890. Phule has also written so many books. Some of his books include Gulamgiri, Tritiya Ratna, Chhatrapati Shivaji, Pune Satyasodak Samaj Report, Sarvajanik Satya Dharma Pustak. So these are some of the books written by Phule. Here we can see the books with the titles are kept here. So you please see the books also. Gulamgiri, a book which compared the conditions of Indian underprivileged sections to that of blacks in American continent. So Gulamgiri, and after that Tritiya Ratna, which touched on the need for education in Indian society. And Chhatrapati Shivaji, it was a political commentary on the rule of Chhatrapati Shivaji. And likewise, Pune Satyasodak Samaj Report. So the report of his dynamic movement called the Satyasodak Samaj movement in Pune in 1877. After that, Sarvajanik Satya Dharma Pustak. So these are the main books written by Mahatma Jyotiba Phule. And besides these books, Mahatma Jyotiba Phule also conducted a fortnightly called Dinabandhu, a journal called Dinabandhu. It's a periodical. He conducted the periodical by name Dinabandhu. So these are some of the academic works. In all these philosophical works, Phule emphasized on the need for education and need for emancipation of underprivileged sections of the society. And there was also a biography on Jyotiba Phule's life. This was written by Dhananjay Keir. Dhananjay Keir's book, Mahatma Jyotiba Phule, Father of Our Social Revolution. This is an important book on Phule's life history. So this book has given a vivid account of the Satyasodak Samaj movement, his views on education, his views on the need to have social rights, economic rights, and political rights. So a biography of Jyotiba Phule, written by Dhananjay Keir, Mahatma Jyotiba Phule, Father of Our Social Revolution. This book also gives a good account of Mahatma Jyotiba Phule's views. To understand his views on education, we must also understand his contemporary conditions. Phule lived in the 19th century. 19th century is considered to be a very orthodoxical century, where social divisions were there, social inequalities were there, and that produces so many social evils. So 19th century social contemporary conditions have given rise to a great philosopher like Jyotiba Phule. In fact, 19th century is a century in Indian society where the social reform movements were very rampant. The Brahma Samaj movement, the Arya Samaj movement, the Satyasodak Samaj movement of Mahatma Jyotiba Phule, and the Vigyan Samaj movement, Prarthana Samaj movement. So these are the Samaj movements for the transformation of society. These movements have come in the age of 19th century because 19th century experienced a very high account of social evils and social inequalities. When the social inequalities and social evils are very rampant in the society, that has resulted and that has produced so many social movements also as well. So as a result, the social inequalities rendered by the caste system, Varna system, subcaste system were challenged by various societies, particularly the Satyasodak Samaj movement. These social inequalities, the Varna system has produced. The Hindu society is divided into 4 Varnas, the Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya, and Shudra Varnas. They are called as the Chaturvarna system. So this Chaturvarna system was very unique to the Indian society, and it has classified the people on the basis of their birth and on the social origins of their birth. So this is how the Varna system and caste system has produced so many inequalities in the society, and they have also resulted in social evils. Particularly the medieval society has brought so many social evils in the Hindu social order, particularly the Parda system, the Jogini system, the Baswini system, the dowry system, the Sati system, the underage marriage system, the child marriage system, and economic exploitation, untouchability. So these are various social evils that were very prevalent, seriously prevalent in those societies. So Phule resented these social evils and social inequalities. And he wanted to build a society devoid of all social inequalities and based on social equality. He wanted to transform the society and reconstruct the society on the foundations of equality and liberty with social justice. So that's why his contemporary conditions made him to challenge the social inequalities and social evils. But there are so many social inequalities and social evils prevalent in 19th century society. And the Peshwas were the rulers. Politically, they were very Brahminical, though they themselves are not Brahmins. They are Brahminical, and there are so many Brahminical advisors. So Peshwa rulers also brought the reinforcement of the caste system in their society. And added to this, there is huge economic exploitation in the 19th century society. All the upper castes used to own thousands of acres of land. So land ownership was in the hands of upper castes. This resulted in the economic exploitation of the peasants, tenants, agricultural laborers, and landless laborers. So this economic exploitation and upper caste supremacy were there. And at times, these upper caste supremacies also led to physical attacks on underprivileged sections. So this is how economic exploitation was also very rampant in those societies. So amidst of all these negative evils or negative conditions of 19th century, there was also a ray of hope. That is, the 1813 Charter Act brought British Western education into Indian society. Indian society has experienced a kind of new lease of life with the introduction of Western education in Indian society. So Indian society was introduced with the British Western education system. In fact, some of the middle classes who have brought up under Western British education system have become middle class intelligentsia, and they have propagated the Western political ideas like liberty, equality, justice, fraternity, unity and integrity, parliamentary democracy. And they wanted these ideals and ideas also to be implemented in the Indian society. So 19th century was not all that bad. On the one hand, we find all the negative qualities of social inequalities, social evils, economic exploitation, and the reinforcement of class and caste by the Peshwa rulers on the one hand. On the other hand, there is also a layer of hope and silver lining. And the 1813 Charter Act of British government brought Western education into the Indian society. So this is how there were negative and positive conditions prevailing in the 19th century Indian society. Now let us see Phulest's efforts on spread of education in India. Phule established first girls' school in 1848. He wanted to emancipate the girls first. He was a champion of women empowerment in the 19th century. So he has established first girls' school in 1848. In a society where the education for girls was looked as a very sin, and the whole lot of women were barred from the primary education and the scheme of education. Phule came forward and challenged this norm and established the first girls' school in 1848. So he has established the first girls' school in 1848. And interestingly, so many girls of upper caste have become the students of this school. So there were around 9 students on the first course of the school. After that, the number simply swelled to reach 273 girls joined in his schools. So he has established first girls' school in 1848. Between 1848 to 1852, Mahatma Jyotiba Phule opened around 18 schools. He has opened 18 schools in Maharashtra, particularly for the more schools for the girls students, the women students. So he has emphasized on the need to have universalization of education in general, women education in particular. To spread the message of education, he has established the first girls' school in 1848, and in a span of 4 years, between 1848 to 1852, he has opened some 18 schools. So that's how he claimed himself as a champion of modern education system, particularly the girls' education. Between 1848 to 1852, he opened 18 schools. And in 1855, he opened night schools for girls, workers, tenants, and women. So this is how he could know the hardships of the workers and tenants and women. For the whole daytime, they may be busy with their own domestic cause or professional cause. That's why he preferred to open the night schools for women, tenants, and workers in 1855. In fact, opening a night school itself is a revolutionary step in 19th century, where the workers, who are mostly hail from the underprivileged sections of society, who are barred from attaining any type of education. So in such a condition, in 1855, he opened the night schools for workers, tenants, and women. And he has also opened first library to students. Has opened a library to the students. That's also a very revolutionary step. So, in course of time, Phule also demanded the government to expand the education facilities in the Indian society. In fact, he submitted a memorandum to William Hunter Commission, William Hunter Education Commission in 1881, demanding more educational institutions in the Indian society. When Lord Ripon, as the Governor General of India, or Viceroy of India, has appointed William Hunter for making suggestions on the spread of education in India, that was known as William Hunter Education Commission. So Jyotiba Phule submitted a memorandum to Hunter Commission and demanded that education facilities should be enhanced in the Indian society, more so to the women students, to facilitate all the people to have education in India in general, and to facilitate more women students to have education in India. This is one thing. And this Education Commission also acknowledged and gave credit to Phule on education. So it also acknowledged Phule's efforts on the spread of education, and it gave credit to Phule on education. So this is how, if we could see the efforts of Phule in the spread of education. First of all, he has established first girls' school in 1848, the spread of education among the women first. And secondly, between 1848 to 1852, he opened around 18 schools in Indian society, mostly are girls' schools. And in 1855, he opened night schools for workers, tenants, and women. And he has also opened first library to the students. And after that, he has submitted a memorandum to William Hunter Education Commission demanding more educational institutions in Indian society. And based on these efforts of Jyotiba Phule, Education Commission acknowledged and gave credit to Phule and his contribution on education. So this is how Phule's contribution is very huge. In the context of 19th century society where social inequalities and social evils are very rampant, Phule's views on spread of education are very great. Now let us see what are the aims and objectives of Fule's education system. Phule wanted a holistic nature of education with all-round development. Every human being has physical, moral, professional, psychological and mental education. So he wanted education curricula to cater the needs of the human being in a holistic nature. He wanted a kind of all-round development of the individual in the society. That's why he wanted holistic nature of the society, holistic nature of education. And for this, he has also designed a specific curriculum for the holistic development of the human being. That's why the first and foremost objective of Fule's education is holistic nature, all-round development. Secondly, he wanted physical education, moral education, and professional education as an integral part of education system itself. So he wanted physical education, moral education, and professional education. Physical education is for the body fitness, and moral education for the value orientation in the society. And professional education is for the materialistic needs of the individual. So education comes as a tool, as a positive tool to provide answer to the needs of human needs of the society. So he wanted physical education, moral education, and professional education as part of the education system. And thirdly, the main aim and objective of Fule's education is to challenge the social order and patterns of dominance. As we all know, 19th century society is riddled with inequalities, is riddled with social evils like parda system, untouchability, dowry system, underage marriages are called as child marriages, sati. So these are various untouchables, evils, social evils that are there in the society. And there are also patterns of dominance, the upper caste dominance, the male dominance, the dominance of wealthier sections and prosperous sections against the poorer sections. So there are patterns of dominance. There are structures of domination. So Fule's education aims at challenging the social order, which is unequal, and he challenges the patterns of dominance. That's why he wanted to send a message that education facilitates equality among the people, and there could not be any patterns of dominance or structures of domination. And he also resent social evils. As we all know, the 19th century society is riddled with social evils like untouchability, dowry system, sati system, parda system, jogini system, baswini system, temple girl system, underage marriages, forced widowhood, sati. So these are various social evils. So he is opposite to these social evils. He wanted to build a society without any social evils. He wanted to build a society where individual should lead a life with dignity and self-respect. So he has resented, he has opposed the social evils in the society. And the main aim and objective of his education is to prepare the people to question the social evils, to challenge the social evils. And after that, rationalistic education. Rationalism comes from the spirit of inquiry and scientific temper. And the spirit of questioning. People should question the blind faiths. People should question the religious superstitions and social superstitions so that people becomes rational. People see and perceive in every fact of life the cause and effect relation. So this is how he wanted to inculcate the rationalistic attitude, rationalistic thinking among the people so that people can challenge the blind faiths and religious superstitions prevailing in the 19th century society. So his education system was aiming at bringing rationalism in the society. So he wanted a rationalistic education that can have the twin features of spirit of inquiry and scientific temper. So he wanted to inculcate the habits of spirit of inquiry and scientific temper among the people. So this is called as the rationalistic education. Now let us see what are the features of Fulest education. And Phule wanted access to education must be uniform. He says universalization of education. Universalization of education means education should be accessible to all the people, irrespective of caste, irrespective of creed, irrespective of community, irrespective of gender, irrespective of community, irrespective of the color of the body, irrespective of the religion, irrespective of the region. All people should have the accessibility to education. That's why he calls it as free and compulsory education with universalization of education. He wanted universalization of education. That means every human entity should be in a position to attain education so as to question the society, to transform the society and rebuild the society with new social and civilizational values. So that's why he wanted access to education, and this education must be accessible to all the people uniformly. That's why he calls it as universalization of education. The post-independence period, all our governments give a call for the universalization of education and free and compulsory education. Secondly, one of the important features of Fule's education is curriculum. He says curriculum must be relevant, utilitarian, and practical. He wanted the educational program, the scheme of education, to be relevant to the student. If the students only by hearts all the poems and he doesn't use his reasoning power, education becomes irrelevant. That's why it must be the quality of applicability, it must be the quality of relevance and utilitarian orientation. It must be utilized. It must have the utility value for the student. And it should have the practical value. It should be relevant to the student. And it should enhance the professional ability and capabilities among the people. So education should also enhance the professional abilities among the people, and they should enhance the capabilities of the students. The professional ability means the expertise in doing things, in doing the various vocations, professions. Agriculture is a profession, trade and commerce is a profession, teaching is a profession. So by having education in these sectors, a person can achieve professional ability and so that he can enhance his capabilities. So Fule's education should need to have, he wanted education to have an important feature of professional ability and enhancing capabilities. And education is essential for all, particularly for backward classes and women. He gave a call to the people that every person should be educated in general, particularly backward classes and women. Because backward classes and women are the real victims of social inequalities and social injustice. He wanted to transform the society from an unequal society to an egalitarian society. So to build and to construct and to transform the society to an egalitarian society, education should be accessible to backward classes and women. That only facilitate the society to get itself transformed into an egalitarian order. Now let us make a critical evaluation of Jyotiba Phule's views on education. Jyotiba Phule was a great champion of education of 19th century. He has started the Satyasodak Samaj movement. As a part of his movement, Satyasodak Samaj movement, Jyotiba Phule has started so many women's schools, women high schools. In 1848, he has started his first women's girls' high school. between 1848 to 1852. He has started 18 girls' schools, and he has also opened the first and foremost library to the students in India. And after that, he has also submitted a report to the Hunter Commission demanding more education facilities to the Indian society so that Indian people can come out of their social evils or irrational thinking patterns and blind faiths and religious superstitions. So this is how his activism is very relevant and very apparent in establishing the schools, in establishing libraries, in establishing night schools, by submitting a report to the William Hunter Commission. This is all his activism. And as a matter of subject, as a philosophical idea, Jyotiba Phule believed that education is a dynamic tool for the transforming the society, and has also given a scheme of education with different features. So this is how education is very relevant according to Jyotiba Phule. And Jyotiba Phule was a great philosopher, belonged to the 19th century, and he was the first philosopher to not only propagate the idea of education among the people, but also establish by himself certain schools and acted as a teacher by himself, made his wife also as a teacher, the first woman teacher of modern India, and has done his bit for the contribution for the development of education in India. That's why his contributions to education can never be forgotten, and the history of education in Indian society is definitely incomplete without mentioning the contributions of Mahatma Jyotiba Phule. Of course, he has supported the government in certain aspects, particularly when the government is very progressive in bringing legislations and progressive legislations against social evils, and when the government is coming forward to establish educational institutions for the spread of universalization of education, he has supported the government. So his support for the British colonial government was criticized by some scholars and some writers, but his activism and his contribution to the Indian education system as such cannot be forgotten, and his contribution is very relevant. And without mentioning the contribution of Jyotiba Phule's contribution to education, the history of education in India is incomplete. So this is how he's a great champion of education in general, women's education in particular, and he was a great social reformer who tried his best to transform the society from the patterns of dominance and bring the people from culture of silence to culture of consciousness. And besides being an activist, he has also written so many books, the philosophical books that that have an inspiring value for billions of people. So this is how he stressed on the need for education and universalization of education. Thank you very much, friends. Thank you.